We need a broader supply of housing, particularly for middle and low income New Zealanders, so that they can access home ownership. I think there's still a lot of work to do to understand exactly how the detail of the planning process has a big impact on how new housing comes to the market. You know, some very low level detailed decisions about building heights, for instance, can have quite a big impact right across Auckland about how much dense, moderate density housing you can build. And we all need to understand those rules so that we can then change them.
What guarantees can be made that speeding up the consenting process won't lead to quality control problems down the track?
Well, you have to do both things at once. So Maurice Williamson's been doing a very thorough job of the re-regulation of the building industry, and now trying to standardise that regulation so we can lower costs. So that work's well underway, and that gives us the confidence that we can take the step which Amy Adams is announcing today, that in the next RMA bill, medium-sized consents will have a time limit of 6 months, and medium-sized consents look like, it's still a bit unclear, but look like it would cover any subdivision over 20 or 30 houses.
So you're confident that speed of process wouldn't compromise build quality?
Yes, I am confident. I mean, at the moment, the slowness of the process is leaving homeowners having to face large costs that are built in by banks and developers to cover delays. If we can reduce those delays, we can reduce the cost of housing, the same standard of housing, to the home buyer.
It seems like a lot of the big issues are going to be tackled by an ongoing work program for reform. I mean, when can we expect to see that happen? Because, you know, you talk about planning systems, planning practices, unlocking development capacities, all to be tackled by an ongoing program. When is that going to be?
Well, so some of that is underway. For instance, the re-regulation of the building industry and standardising the consent processes. That work has been in discussion with local authorities all year. Some of it has been started more recently, so the decision to streamline the Auckland plan is one of the more critical planning decisions for New Zealand for the next 5 years, and that was announced just last week, and that will enable a much shorter period over which the new plan for Auckland, which is, you know, a third of the population, will be able to take account of housing affordability, and the council's going to be publishing its housing affordability strategy. So that's all lining up pretty well. Then there'll be a series of new announcements, and there's been one today about the medium-sized consents, and over the next 6 to 9 months, the government's got reform of the Resource Management Act and the Local Government Act already in stream. So we'll be looking to make decisions, you know, actually over the next few months we'll start making more of those decisions, and they'll be in that legislation.
It will still take 9 months until we know the full response to the report.
Yeah, that's right.
So
yes.
What did the government think about the headline recommendation for the immediate release of land on the outskirts of Auckland and Christchurch?
Well, in the case of Christchurch, that's been done. It's run into some legal, running across some legal hurdles, but we are. We are very keen to see housing being affordable in Christchurch, particularly for those people who've been shifted out of lower value areas, have their insurance settlements, who need to be able to afford to rebuild elsewhere at reasonable cost. So we do have a working experiment there, and everyone needs to be clear, the government wants to achieve affordable housing in Christchurch. And in Auckland we have the opportunity with their plan. So look, in each case, making progress involves getting about 15 things moving at once, because you're looking at such a complex set of decisions and decision makers, banks, developers, infrastructure companies, councils, and even within councils they've got conflicting objectives to do with local politics and environmental impact and so on.
So councils effectively got 9 months to do what the government wants to see them do. I mean, what if they don't provide more land on the outskirts of the cities? What are you going to do then?
Well, look, we found in our discussions with them, whatever they used to think, they are increasingly focused on affordable housing. If they were to ignore the government's objectives, then we'd be looking to exert a bit more control over their planning process.
Shall we say over the last 10 years they have been ignoring housing affordability objectives, so why not just legislate to make them, or put it in the hands of central government and take it out of their hands? Because you're leaving it in their hands, and they have been part of the problem.
We'd prefer to work with them if possible because they've got a local mandate and a much better understanding of their local area. But we want to assist them with that. So, for instance, we're going to do a detailed suburb by suburb study in Auckland, which no one has actually done before, to establish exactly what's happening and at a detailed level what impact the planning decisions are having on supply suburb by suburb. Because at the moment there's a lot of generalisations about it. So that's the kind of constructive way we'd like to work with councils, but they should be clear today that the government is determined to see housing affordability improve. That hasn't been a focus of their plans in the past. We want to see it as a focus of their plans in the future.
So what about developers? Because it's still in developers' commercial interest to hold land back so they can maximise profit. What can you do to actually force them to?
Well, that's another reasonable issue. To some extent, it's a matter of if you create enough opportunities, they have to develop. Because if they hold back, someone else is going to build. It's just like any other market. If there's more and more supply, they can't sit on their sections. There's also been propositions from some councils about putting covenants on them about the release of land. We're going to get to test some of these theories in Christchurch because they would, the idea of expanding supply fairly rapidly is actually not one that councils have used, so people don't really understand all the implications of it, nor do we. For instance, you can make a whole lot of sections available, but if the council says we can't afford any of the infrastructure, well, no one can build a house. So you've got to solve the problem of availability of land, including the availability of opportunities for moderate density within cities, and you've got to coordinate that with the infrastructure. And councils, to be fair to them, have, that's big costs for them. So that's why we've got to work with them about how you can bring these things together more efficiently.
Just so we're clear, if councils don't move to help you in terms of freeing up land for affordable houses, you will legislate to compel them to do that?
Well, all I'm saying is that from the government's point of view, affordable housing is really important. It impacts directly on the government and on the economy, and we'd like to work with them so that the larger interest is clear to them. And we're also making it pretty clear that, I think on behalf of the community actually, that if we can make housing more affordable just by changing the rules, then why wouldn't you? And then you'd have less New Zealand families worried about whether their offspring are going to be able to afford a house.
The rules you're talking about local government acts?
Yes, we would expect to see changes in the Resource Management Act and the Local Government Act that well-informed changes that will promote more affordable housing.
So you're looking at any sort of cap on what councils can do developers?
Well, there's a couple of studies going on right now about development contributions because the policies are inconsistent across the country. Councils have been trying to deal with the problem of how to fund infrastructure in subdivisions. So we understand the problem, but the solution they're using at the moment in some cases is a significant barrier to reasonably priced housing. So we'll get the results of those reviews pretty soon, both development contributions themselves and infrastructure and local government. Those things were set up about 6 months ago, and they'll be incorporated into the work program over the next 6 months, or into the decisions over the next 6 months.
Can we anticipate an SOP on the local government bill which is being considered? I mean, are we expecting legislative changes to be made as a result of this policy process that you're starting?
Well, there will be legislative changes, but I couldn't comment in detail on whether it'll be that particular amendment bill that's in the select committee right now. It might be a bit late for that, but there'll certainly be legislative changes ahead of us.
Consider reaching across the House to your opposition, because they obviously have strong views on this too, and are very, very keen to see progress made in affordable housing.
Yeah, they tend to focus. No, look, we haven't approached them about making the policy. They tend to focus on subsidising the rents and the mortgages. Okay, well, we've already got $2 billion worth of subsidy there, and it's going to grow by 300 million over the next few years. We want to focus on the planning and resource management processes right at the start of the pipeline. So if they want to support us on that, they're most welcome to.
But if
There doesn't seem to be much comfort for young families struggling either with high rents or to purchase their own home. I mean, you're saying trust us, it's going to happen eventually. I mean, what can they take from?
Well, for the first time, they've got a government clearly articulating that it wants to make sure the housing market's working properly, and we want to attack the disease rather than the symptoms. Secondly, they have got the lowest interest rates we've had in 40 years, and government support for those families continues to increase. We just increased Working for Families payments on the 1st of April by 5% this year. But it will take a while to work through the planning system. I think how they can help us is make their views clear to their council and their councillors that they want to see sensible decisions that are going to allow young families to be able to afford homes.
How long do you expect those changes to come through?
Well, we'll be making decisions over the next 6 to 9 months, and we would expect that to flow into plans. But just to give you a sense of the scale, most major district plans took 10 years to become operative, and a lot of the changes take 3 to 5 years. The one plan for Auckland, we've made a decision that that'll all be done in 3 years. So it could be, 1 to 3 years before the significant changes in the planning, close to 2 to 3 years before the significant changes in the planning processes. If we think, we do always have the option of some legislative change from Parliament, but we would want to be careful about cutting across the mandate and the knowledge of local councils. We'd prefer to work with them.